The front door felt heavier against my palm that Sunday evening, like the whole house was bracing itself on the other side. I had been gone for 7 days at a leadership summit in Chicago, panel discussions, late-night strategy sessions, the kind of event that was supposed to catapult my career as communications director into its next big chapter. I was still in my cobalt blue suit, conference badge tucked into my blazer pocket, suitcase rolling over the threshold behind me. I expected the usual, Ethan yelling, "Mom," from somewhere down the hall, Marcus calling out from the kitchen, maybe the smell of something simmering on the stove. Instead, I walked into a quiet so dense it felt like walking into a wall. Not the peaceful quiet of a house between conversations. The loaded, airless stillness of people holding their breath. They were all in the living room. Marcus sat at the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. He stared at the floor like it might open up and swallow him. Livia, my younger sister, was perched beside him, not quite on the couch cushion, not quite on the arm, her body angled toward him. She wore a deep green dress I'd helped her pick out for a job interview a few months back. Her hand rested lightly on Marcus's shoulder, like it had every right to be there. Marisol, my mother, stood by the curtains, a crumpled tissue pressed to her mouth. Her shoulders shook, but she didn't make a sound. And Ethan, my 15-year-old son, sat alone in the armchair opposite them, arms crossed over his chest, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on me with a look I had never seen on his face before. Judgment. And something colder beneath it. I stopped in the doorway between the foyer and the living room. One hand still on my purse. Suitcase at my feet. My laptop bag strap digging into my shoulder. No one moved. No one spoke. Somewhere above the fireplace, the slim silver clock ticked, each second stretching out longer than the flight I'd just taken home. My mother was the first to break. "Elena," she said, voice fraying on my name. We need to talk." The words drifted across the room and seemed to fall at my feet. I looked at Marcus first. He still wouldn't look at me. His shoulders were hunched, the way they got when he was waiting for a verdict. Livia's jaw was set, lips pressed together, her spine straight. She didn't look ashamed. She looked ready. Like this was a conversation she'd rehearsed 100 times in front of a mirror. My mother's eyes were red and swollen, but there was something tight, resigned, in the way she clutched that tissue, a woman who had already chosen a side and hated herself for it. And then there was Ethan. My baby, who'd once slept curled against my chest during nights when Marcus worked late. My kid who used to run down the hallway in dinosaur pajamas. He stared at me now with a flatness that sent a cold line of fear down my back. Pity, maybe. But layered with something sharper. Contempt. He uncrossed his arms slowly, like he'd been waiting for his cue. "Mom," he said, and his voice was steady, too steady for 15. "Your time is over. Dad is happier with Aunt Livia now." The sentence slipped into the room like a knife and then just stayed there, lodged between us. I watched my son's mouth form the sounds. Heard the words again as my brain tried to reject them. "Your time is over. Dad is happier. With Aunt Livia." I looked at Livia. She didn't flinch. If anything, she sat a little straighter, fingers tightening ever so slightly on Marcus's shoulder. My gaze shifted to Marcus. He finally lifted his eyes to mine. In them I saw it all at once: guilt, yes, but also a strange, exhausted relief. The kind of relief you feel when you finally drop something heavy you never should have picked up in the first place. In that moment, standing in my own living room with my suitcase still by the door and my family arranged like a tribunal, I understood something very clearly. This wasn't a conversation. It was a decision. And I was the only one who hadn't known it had already been made. What none of them realized yet was that they hadn't just ended my marriage, they detonated the version of me who would have begged them to stay. To understand how a blue suit and a leadership summit led to my husband and my sister sitting side by side, and my son declaring me obsolete, we have to step back, months before this ambush in blue, when the cracks in my perfect life first began to show. Subscribe now so you're here for every turn this story takes. We have to step back, months before this ambush in blue, when the cracks in my perfect life first began to show. Back then, they were hairline fractures, Marcus working later, coming home smelling like hotel soap instead of our detergent, Livia helping with Ethan's homework more often, my mother dropping strange little comments about how men need to feel appreciated, and, you work so hard, Hija, don't forget about your marriage. I saw all of it and filed it away under stress and family dynamics, and this is what happens when you're building a career. I didn't realize I was watching the prelude to my own removal. Now, standing in the doorway, I was staring at the finished product. Ethan, I said quietly, surprised at how calm my voice sounded in my own ears. What did you just say? His chin lifted a fraction. He glanced at Marcus, as if checking to make sure he was still on script. I said, he repeated, slower, your time is over. Dad is happier with Aunt Livia now. You're never here. You don't get to be mad about this. There it was. A rehearsed line with a teenage wobble underneath. My son, weaponized. My mother let out a little sob. Ethan, no sees tan duro, she whispered, but she didn't correct him. She didn't say he was wrong. She didn't even look at me. I swallowed, feeling the air scrape down my throat. Is that how you all feel? I asked. That my time is over? Marcus finally spoke. Elena, don't twist this. I laughed once, a short, disbelieving sound. Oh, I'm not twisting anything. I'm just trying to understand the script you clearly wrote without me. Livia shifted beside him. This isn't a script, she said. It's the truth. You've been checked out for years, Lena. Someone had to say it. The nickname hit me like a slap. Lena. The name she'd used when we were kids and shared a room and secrets and hand-me-down dresses. Now she said it sitting next to my husband, her hand still resting lightly on his shoulder like she was staking a claim. I looked at that hand. Small, manicured, nails painted a pale rose I recognized from the bottle on our bathroom counter. Move your hand, I said quietly. Her eyebrows twitched. She didn't move it. Marcus cleared his throat. Elena, we didn't want it to happen like this. How did you want it to happen? I asked, my voice still terrifyingly calm. A PowerPoint? A family brunch? A group text? Ethan shifted in his chair. Dad and Aunt Livia didn't do anything wrong, he blurted. They just fell in love and you were never around and you're always mad and... Stop, my mother said sharply, voice cracking. Basta, Ethan. I held up a hand. No, let him finish. It sounds like he's been waiting to say this for a while. He clamped his mouth shut, eyes burning into me with that fierce, brittle righteousness only teenagers manage to carry without collapsing under it. I let my gaze sweep over all of them. How long? I asked. When did this start? Silence, again. The clock ticked toward the answer none of them wanted to say out loud. Marcus exhaled, shoulders sagging. 8 months. I nodded slowly. 8 months. That lined up perfectly with the first time he'd had to start traveling more. The first time Livia had volunteered to help out with Ethan's math tutoring on Thursdays. The first time my mother had told me, in a too careful voice, that my job was very demanding and men have needs too. And how long have you known Ethan? I asked, turning to my son. He looked away. A while. Ethan. My voice sharpened just enough to cut through his defiance. How long? He swallowed. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of my son carrying this, letting it harden inside him, letting my husband and my sister reframe reality in front of him until I was the intruder. And you, Mommy? I asked. How long have you known? My mother's shoulders curled inward. She pressed the tissue harder to her lips. 3 meses, she whispered. 3 months. I wanted to tell you, but I thought, maybe it was just a phase. Maybe they would stop. I didn't want to destroy the family. I stared at her, stunned by the casual violence of that sentence. You didn't want to destroy the family, I repeated. So you let them destroy me instead. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was trying to keep peace, Elena. You picked a side, I said. Don't call it peace. Livia exhaled sharply. This isn't about sides. You're making it dramatic, as usual. Things changed. Feelings changed. You're never home, you're always on your phone or your laptop, and Marcus and I, we were there for each other. It just happened. It just happened, I echoed. Like tripping over a coffee table. You accidentally fell into my husband's bed for 8 months? Livia flushed, but she didn't back down. We didn't plan this. But you did plan this, I said, gesturing at the room. All of you. Sitting me down. Waiting for me to walk through the door so you could tell me my time is over on the stage I paid for. Marcus flinched. That's not fair. Fair, I repeated slowly. Marcus, you've been sleeping with my sister behind my back, in my house, while using my income to keep this whole circus running. Forgive me if my fairness meter is a little off tonight. A flicker of panic crossed his face. Your income? This isn't about money. Oh, it's absolutely about money, I cut in. But we'll get there. The words came out before I fully understood why I'd said them, but somewhere under the shock, another part of my brain was already spinning, calculating. 8 months. Extra trips. Late nights. New clothes I hadn't bought. Little things that hadn't lined up. I could feel a new version of myself waking up, one who counted things, who documented, who would not be talked out of what she knew. Elena, Marcus said, tone shifting into that soft, reasonable voice he used in meetings when he wanted to sound like the adult in the room. We didn't gather here to attack you. We wanted to be honest. To tell you that things aren't working. That we've moved on. Livia and we're together now. Ethan understands. Mom understands. We all just think it's time you accepted. That you've replaced me, I finished. He opened his mouth, closed it again. My pulse thudded in my ears, but my mind was oddly clear. Each of them was laid out in front of me like chess pieces already moved into checkmate. There was no win on this board, not the old kind, where everyone hugged it out and promised to do better. That life was dead. What remained was a choice, how I would leave its funeral. I straightened my shoulders, feeling the weight of the suitcase handle in my palm. My cobalt sleeve pulled tight over my wrist. I suddenly became acutely aware of the fact that I was still wearing my conference badge under my blazer. Elena Hart, Senior Communications Director. Like a label from another universe. I see, I said quietly. So this is an ambush with a consensus. My mother shook her head, crying harder. No ESRC, Hija. We love you. We didn't want to hurt you more by hiding it. You thought doing it together would soften the blow? I asked. Using my son as your messenger? Mom, no one used me, Ethan burst out. I'm not a kid. I can make my own decisions. Yes, I said, meeting his eyes. You made a decision. I heard it. For a moment, the weight of that admission pressed on my chest so hard I thought I would fold in on myself. This was the part, I realized hazily, where I was supposed to scream. Throw something. Beg. Bargain. Collapse. Prove them right about how dramatic I was. Instead, something steadier slid into place inside me, cold and precise. It felt like the moment before a speech when you've rehearsed too many times to get lost in your nerves. You just execute. Okay, I said. Marcus blinked. Okay. I nodded once. You've made your choice. All of you. Elena, that's not, Livia started. I raised my hand. No. You wanted honesty? Here it is. You want to be together? Be together. You want my mother and my son to support you? Fine. Enjoy your new family arrangement. My mother made a wounded sound. Mija, please. But understand something, I continued, the words coming faster now, riding the calm. You don't get to decide the terms of my exit. You don't get to dictate how I react, or how I heal, or what I take with me when I walk out of here. Silence. Their faces blurred for a moment, then snapped back into focus. Elena, where are you going? Marcus asked, standing up halfway as I bent to pick up my suitcase handle. Away from this, I said simply. You can't just walk out, Livia snapped. We're trying to talk to you like adults. You've been talking about me for 8 months without me, I replied. You don't get to lecture me about communication now. Ethan stood up, anger flushing his cheeks. So that's it? You're just gonna run? Prove you only care about work and yourself? The words hit their target, but they didn't penetrate. They landed on the surface of something solid. I'm not running, I said, looking at him, really looking, memorizing his height, his voice, the way his hair fell over his forehead. I'm choosing not to bleed in front of people who are enjoying the show. His eyes flickered then, a brief flash of doubt before the loyal mask slid back into place. Elena, please, my mother pleaded. Sit. Talk. We can figure out. No, I said. You've all been very clear. I'm just, finally hearing you. I turned toward the door. Elena. Marcus's voice cracked. Where will you go? I paused, hand on the knob. For a heartbeat, the urge to turn around nearly knocked me over. To demand answers. To ask what, exactly, made Livia better. To ask my mother how she could hold my son's secret and sleep at night. But every question felt like a rope tying me back to a burning house. I opened the door instead. I don't know yet, I said over my shoulder. But wherever it is, it will be somewhere I'm not treated like a problem you've already solved. And then I stepped out. The air outside was cool, the sky bruised with evening clouds. I rolled my suitcase down the driveway, each click of the wheels on the concrete sounding far too loud. I expected someone to follow me, to grab my arm, to call my name. No one did. When I reached the car, my hands shook for the first time. I had to breathe through it, fingers fumbling with the keys. I slid into the driver's seat, shut the door, and for a full 30 seconds I just sat there, forehead resting against the steering wheel, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No shouts. No apologies. Just the faint hum of traffic in the distance and the echo of my son's voice in my head. Your time is over. I started the engine. As I pulled away from the house, my house, I caught a final glimpse of the living room through the front window. 4 silhouettes, still in position. A busted family portrait. They thought this was the night they removed me from the picture. They had no idea it was the night I began redrawing the entire frame. I drove toward the city lights, toward the anonymous safety of a hotel room and a bed that wasn't ours. I didn't know yet how deep their betrayal went, or how much of my life they'd already carved up between them. But I knew one thing with the same clarity I brought to every crisis at work. Information is power. And tomorrow morning, the woman they ambushed in a blue suit would start collecting it. The version of me who walked out of that house wasn't broken. She was awake. The hotel clerk didn't ask why I was checking in alone, in a cobalt suit, with my eyes a little too bright and my smile a little too sharp. Single room, queen bed, he said. City view. Perfect, I replied, like this was just another business trip. I took the keycard, rode the elevator to the 11th floor, and let myself into a room that smelled faintly of citrus and bleach. Neutral art on the walls. Crisp white sheets. A desk facing the window, the city glittering beyond. I shut the door, slid the deadbolt, and waited for the collapse. It didn't come. No wail, no dramatic slide down the wall, no screaming into a pillow. Instead there was just a steady hum in my chest, like an engine idling. I set my suitcase by the closet, draped my blazer over the chair, and sat on the edge of the bed. Hands flat on my knees. Breathing in, out, in, out. With the distance of 11 floors and a lobby between me and that living room, everything started reordering itself. 8 months. Livia's, I'll swing by and help Ethan with chemistry, you're always so tired after work. Marcus, having to stay late for a client 3 Thursdays in a row. My mother telling me, in that too light voice, Livia is such a help around the house, no? Poor Marcus, he looks so stressed. Ethan's door closing a little faster when I walked down the hallway. His phone turning face down whenever I came near. The little red flags I'd treated like confetti from the parade of my busy life. And under all of it, the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach every time I opened our banking app and saw the balance lower than it should have been. We must be spending more on groceries. Maybe I forgot a payment. I'll check later. Later was here. I stood up, kicked off my heels, and moved to the desk. I set my laptop down with care, like I was placing a scalpel on a tray. If they wanted to stage an ambush, fine. They just forgot I make a living managing crises. The first thing I did was change passwords, email, cloud storage, banking app, everything tied to my name or my phone number. My fingers flew over the keys, muscle memory and fury blending into efficiency. Then I went hunting. Joint checking. Joint savings. Marcus's card where I was the primary. The family card we used for groceries and school supplies. Page after page of transactions stared back at me. The pattern emerged fast. A steakhouse downtown Marcus and I had never been to together. Twice a month, minimum. A boutique hotel near the river, charged in the middle of a random week, once in January, twice in March, again in May. A jewelry store receipt in Livia's neighborhood. A spa. 2 airline tickets to Miami over a weekend when he told me he was at a conference in Dallas. I scrolled further back, jaw tightening. Then I saw it. A recurring payment, every month for the last 6 months, to a property management company I didn't recognize. Same amount, same date. Not our mortgage. Not our HOA. A separate line of its own. I clicked through details, heart thudding. Rental unit. 1 bedroom. Different address across town. My screen reflected in the window showed a woman staring back at me with a strange mix of fury and clarity. Marcus hadn't just cheated. He'd set up a second life for my sister using an apartment funded out of the account my salary fed first. An ugly little laugh escaped me. Of course you did, I muttered. Why just steal a husband when you can steal his wife's money too? I copied every statement into a folder. Screenshots. PDFs. I backed them up twice, once in a cloud folder with a fresh password, once on an external drive I kept in my work bag. Every withdrawal over $200 went into a spreadsheet. Dates, locations, notes of what I suspected each one was. Gifts I never got. Dinners I never ate. Nights in hotels I never stayed in. By the time I was done, my eyes ached and my shoulders burned. The digital clock on the nightstand read 2:17 a.m. Only then did I close the laptop. I lay back on the bed, fully dressed except for my shoes, and stared at the ceiling. The hotel's air conditioning hissed softly. Down on the street, a siren wailed and faded. They expected me to shatter. Instead, I was cataloging. Sleep came in thin strips, broken by flashes of memory, Livia laughing with Marcus over the grill at a summer barbecue. Ethan's voice saying, "Your time is over." my mother's eyes sliding away from mine. By morning, the decision was solid in my chest. I wasn't going to ask them for anything. I was going to take back what was mine. I found Ariella Stone the way I found most things I trusted, with research. High-conflict divorce attorney, downtown, I typed into my phone while stirring powdered creamer into the terrible hotel coffee. Her name popped up in 3 different articles: sharp, relentless, not for the faint of heart. Perfect. Her office occupied the 22nd floor of a glass tower overlooking the river. The receptionist took one look at my face, at the folder clutched in my hand, and ushered me back before I'd even finished filling out the intake form. Ariella stood by the window, dark hair pulled into a sleek knot, black suit as sharp as her gaze. She seemed carved out of equilibrium. "Elena," she said, extending a hand. "Tell me everything. Start with the end and work backwards." I liked her immediately. I told her about the living room ambush in clean, measured sentences, the way I'd brief a crisis to an executive team. Every so often my voice would catch, every time, she waited a beat, then nodding for me to go on. When I finished, she opened my folder without a word. She flipped through bank statements, receipts, screenshots of text previews on credit card notifications. "This is good," she said. "You did this last night?" "Yes." She smiled without warmth. "You'd make an excellent paralegal." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Here's what I see," she continued, tapping a manicured nail against the pages. "Long-term affair. Financial dissipation. Potential parental alienation. Your son being used as a mouthpiece in an ambush is notable." Parental alienation, I repeated, the legal weight of the phrase settling over Ethan's face in my memory. "We'll document it," she said. "We don't throw words like that around lightly, but we also don't ignore what's in front of us." She grabbed a legal pad, her handwriting fast and precise. "Step 1, we file for divorce citing irreconcilable differences, with a detailed financial affidavit. We claim dissipation of marital assets based on these expenditures." She circled the stack of statements. "Step 2, we move to protect anything that's solely in your name, retirement accounts, stock options, any property that predates the marriage." "I bought our house with my savings," I said. "He contributed later, but the down payment was mine." "Good," she said. "We'll make that very clear." My chest warmed with a small, savage satisfaction. "Step 3, Ariella went on, we request temporary orders. You keep primary control of joint accounts. He's restrained from using them for anything beyond basic living expenses until division is determined. We freeze access to your retirement and investment accounts until the court signs off." "He's been using the joint accounts to pay for her apartment," I said. "That property management company." "I saw," she cut in. "We'll subpoena the lease. And we'll want proof of when he started funding it." I nodded. "I want everything on paper." "No more," he said, she said. Her eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "Good. That attitude will save you a lot of pain." She slid a business card across the desk. Another name was scrawled on the back in crisp, angular letters. "Victor Hale," she said. "Private investigator. Ex-cop. He's expensive and worth every penny. I'd like him to confirm what we suspect and fill in what we don't know yet." Is that acceptable? Yes, I said without hesitation. Ariella leaned back. One more thing, Elena. From this moment on, you do not confront your husband or your sister about evidence. You don't send long texts. You don't vent over email. Assume anything written or recorded can end up in front of a judge. I'm in communications, I said. I know how a bad message can be used. Good. Then you also know silence is sometimes your most powerful statement. She gave me a packet of documents to sign. I signed every page with a steady hand. When I left her office, my marriage was no longer just a personal catastrophe. It was a case. And I finally had someone on my side. Victor Hale looked exactly like a man you'd hire to find things other people wanted hidden, gray at the temples, tired eyes, posture that said he'd seen every kind of lie there was. We met in a coffee shop a block from Ariella's office. He listened without interrupting, jotting bullet points into a small notebook. 8 months, give or take, he said when I finished. Started around that family barbecue you mentioned? The one where your husband and sister just clicked over grill duty? Heat crawled up my neck. I remembered Livia laughing at some joke of Marcus's, my mother watching them with an odd little smile. I'll pull security footage from the hotel charges, trace the apartment, get you dates, times, Victor said. I can also look into your son's phone records if you authorize it. I understand he's a minor. Do it, I said, the words tasting bitter. If he's been involved, I need to know how deep it goes. Victor didn't flinch. I'll be in touch within a week. He was in touch in 4 days. The email arrived while I sat at the small desk in my hotel room, half-heartedly responding to work messages, pretending my life hadn't just imploded. Subject line, preliminary findings. I opened the attachment. The affair had started exactly when I suspected, after that barbecue, 8 months ago. Dinner, meetings, twice a week. Lunches. Hotel rooms that matched the receipts I'd found. Photos of Marcus and Livia kissing in a parking garage I recognized. The apartment had been rented 6 months earlier, lease signed by Livia with Marcus listed as emergency contact. The payments all pulled from our joint account, my paychecks account. My stomach knotted as I scrolled. Phone records showed Ethan texting Livia and Marcus late at night, coordinating study sessions, letting them know when I was on my way home. There were group chats that included my mother. 3 months' worth. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd collaborated. I sat back, the laptop's glow washing the room in cold light. Okay, I whispered. Okay. My phone buzzed on the desk. Marcus's name lit up the screen. For a moment I considered ignoring it. Then I answered and said nothing. Elena, he breathed. Thank God. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm fine, I said. What do you need, Marcus? We need to talk, he said. Face to face. Please. Just, meet me somewhere. The lobby of the Marriott on 8th? Half an hour? Against my better judgment, I agreed. Not because I owed him anything. Because I wanted to look him in the eyes when the next phase began. The Marriott lobby buzzed with low conversation and clinking glasses. Marcus stood near a tall plant, twisting his wedding ring around his finger. He looked smaller. "Thank you for coming," he said when he saw me. "You look tired." "I've had an eventful 48 hours, I replied. He flinched. "Elena, it's not what you think. I think you've been sleeping with my sister for 8 months, paying for her apartment with our money, and turning our son against me," I said. "Is there a more flattering version?" He ran a hand through his hair. "You make it sound so calculated. We didn't plan this. You've been married to your career for years. You're never home, you're always stressed, and Livia was just there. We connected. We didn't mean to fall in love, it just happened," I finished. "Yes, I've heard the line." His eyes flashed. "You think you're perfect? You've been distant, Elena. Cold. You treat everything like a project, including me. I tried to talk to you, you brushed me off. With Livia, I feel seen. She's present. She appreciates me." There it was. The script he'd been rehearsing. "I'm sure she does," I said evenly. "I'd appreciate you too if you paid my rent." He opened his mouth, closed it. "I didn't come here to argue," he said. "I came because you walking out like that, it scared Ethan. It scared Mom. We can figure out a way to transition. To make this easier." "Transition," I repeated slowly. "Like we're merging departments at work." "Elena." "I've already filed for divorce," I said, cutting him off. "Your copy is with Ariella Stone. You'll be served this week." He blanched. "You hired a lawyer already?" "Yes. And a private investigator." Fear flickered across his face. "You didn't have to do that. We can keep this civil." "You should have thought about civil 8 months ago," I said. For a moment, we just looked at each other, the man I'd built a life with and the stranger who'd dismantled it. He swallowed hard. "There's something else you need to know." My fingers curled around the handle of my bag. "If it's another justification, I'm not interested." "It's not a justification," he said. "It's... Livia is pregnant. 8 weeks." The word slammed into me harder than Ethan's had. Pregnant. For a second, the lobby warped around the edges. Sound dulled. The floor tilted. My mind did the math automatically. 8 weeks. 2 months. Right in the middle of the time he'd been sitting at our dinner table saying everything was fine. On the outside, I didn't move. "Congratulations," I said, though my tongue felt numb. "You've upgraded your affair to a family." "Elena, please," he whispered. "I didn't want you to hear it from someone else. I wanted you to know we're serious. This isn't some fling. There's a baby." "Then you should probably start saving," I said. "Because the joint accounts you've been bleeding are about to look very different." I reached into my bag and slid an envelope across the small lobby table between us. "What's this?" he asked. "Copies," I said. "Of the statements showing every dinner, every hotel, every rent payment. I thought your lawyer might appreciate a head start." His face drained of color as he flipped through page after page. "Elena, how could you?" "How could I what?" I asked softly. "Refuse to be the compliant, discarded wife you all expected?" "Marcus," I'm done reacting. I'm responding. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I stood. Our conversations from now on go through counsel, I said. Unless it's about Ethan's immediate safety. Elena, wait. I walked away, heartbeat loud but step steady. By the time the elevator doors closed, my hands were shaking again, but this time from adrenaline, not helplessness. The first photos from Victor arrived a week later. Marcus in the parking lot at work, yelling into his phone, face twisted. Marcus in a conference room, head in his hands while his boss stood over him, arms crossed. An email forwarded from a contact in HR, concerns about behavioral changes and inappropriate personal drama spilling into the office. Livia's building came next. Complaints from neighbors about shouting at odd hours. Victor's notes, arguing heard about money, baby, you promised. Their fairy tale apartment looked less like paradise and more like a pressure cooker. I scrolled through the evidence in my quiet hotel room, city lights blinking just beyond the glass. They had told me my time was over. But the storm I'd started by walking out of that house was only just beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the thunder. Port Norwood smelled like rain and second chances. The offer came 6 months after I walked out of my house in that blue suit, a promotion to Vice President of Communications, overseeing a regional expansion based in a coastal city I'd never heard of until the job posting popped up in my inbox. Port Norwood, my CEO said over a video call. Growing tech hub, clean slate. We need someone steady and strategic out there. That's you, Elena. Think about it. I didn't need to think. Yes, I said. I'll take it. The divorce had dragged and snapped and finally settled by then. Marcus kept his pension and the lease on the apartment he'd moved into after leaving Livia's. I kept the house, which I sold, and the majority of our joint accounts after Ariella walked the judge line by line through Marcus's romantic expenditures. Joint custody on paper, but Ethan chose to stay mostly with his father and grandmother, still tangled in their version of the story. I arrived in Port Norwood in early autumn, the sky a soft, pearled gray, the bay below dotted with sailboats like punctuation marks. My new apartment sat on the 20th floor of a glass tower carved into the side of a hill. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Open-plan kitchen. Clean lines. No memories in the walls. I stood alone that first evening, cardboard boxes stacked by the door, watching the sun melt into the horizon. The city spread out below, ferries gliding across the water, lights blinking on one by one. For the first time in years, the silence around me felt like mine. I met Julian Rivers 2 months later, in a conference room overlooking the construction site for our new headquarters. He was the lead architect, all quiet focus and sketch-stained fingers, explaining sightlines and natural light while the rest of the team nodded along. Mid-40s, a little silver at his temples, eyes the color of wet stone. When he talked about buildings, his whole posture changed, shoulders relaxed, hands moving in precise arcs in the air like he could already see the finished structure. This lobby shouldn't just funnel people through, he said, drawing a quick outline on the plans. It should slow them down. Give them a moment to exhale before they move deeper into the space. I felt something in my chest respond to that idea, a place designed to make you breathe. After the meeting, he held the door open for me. "You're Elena, right?" he asked. The comms lead they stole from Chicago? Depends who you ask, I said. Some people back there would say they were happy to see me go. He smiled, not pushing. I'm Julian. If my team sends you designs full of jargon, yell at me first. I translate. Our relationship didn't start with sparks or fireworks. It started with coffee. Quick check-ins after meetings. Shared Uber rides back from late-night site visits. A friendly debate over whether the building needed more green space or more communal work pods. He listened when I spoke, really listened, without waiting for his turn to talk. It felt unfamiliar. One evening, after we'd spent an hour going over signage concepts, he walked me down to the lobby. Some of us are grabbing dinner at the place on the corner, he said. You're welcome to join. No work talk, I promise. I have emails, I started, the excuse reflexive. Then I caught myself. My evenings were mine now. No one waiting at home with a simmering resentment because I'd stayed late. No one demanding proof of loyalty. I could eat, I said. Dinner turned into a walk along the waterfront, cold air biting our cheeks, hands tucked into pockets. We talked about everything but work, music, books, the way Port Norwood seemed to shift personalities depending on the weather. At my building, we paused under the awning. I like this version of you, he said lightly. The one who's not putting out fires. I'm still waiting to meet her, I replied. Most days it feels like I'm still smoldering. His expression softened. Then maybe you just need people who don't throw gasoline. We didn't kiss. He didn't try. He just smiled, said goodnight, and let me go upstairs on my own. That night, lying in my new bed with the city lights blinking outside, I realized my heart had registered something important. He wasn't a rescue. He wasn't a distraction. He was an option. And I could choose him, or not, from a place that was finally starting to feel like solid ground. Back in Chicago, Marcus and Livia's fantasy life was cracking like cheap glass. The first I heard of the baby's arrival was through my mother, a brief, awkward call in the middle of a workday. Your sister had the baby, she said without preamble. A little girl. They named her Maya. That's nice, I said, the words tasting neutral and strange. There was a pause. Livia, she is having a hard time, my mother added. No sleeping. So much crying. The neighbors complain. Marcus is stressed, the money. I closed my eyes, pressing my thumb and forefinger against the bridge of my nose. Mommy, I'm sorry they're struggling, I said. But I can't be the person who fixes it. Not this time. She sighed, a familiar defeated sound. I know. I don't know what happened to my family. I almost laughed. You chose what happened, I wanted to say. But we were past the point where that would do anything but reopen scars. Take care of yourself, I said instead. And of Ethan. I hung up and went back to reviewing press releases, but the image lingered, Livia pacing a small apartment, baby screaming on her shoulder, dark circles under her eyes. Marcus fretting over bills as his performance reviews at work slid downhill. Their stolen love story now weighted down by 2 a.m. feedings and unpaid invoices. Reality, right on schedule. Weeks later, an email popped up from an address I didn't recognize. Subject, Elena, please. I almost deleted it. Then curiosity won. It was from Livia. She didn't apologize. Not really. She described postpartum anxiety, how Marcus had moved into a friend's spare room for space, how our mother had started avoiding their calls because she couldn't handle the drama. Everything is falling apart, Livia wrote. I know you hate me, but you're still my sister. You're good with money, with planning. I don't know what to do. Please call me. I need you. My stomach twisted. For a moment, muscle memory kicked in, the old role, the older sister who came running, who fixed messes, who sacrificed sleep and sanity to patch up everyone else's cracks. Then I pictured the living room. Her hand on Marcus's shoulder. Your time is over. I clicked reply. I stared at the blank box for a long minute, fingers hovering over the keys. In the end, I typed 3 sentences. Livia. I hope you get the support you and Maya need, from professionals and from the people you chose. I'm not available to step back into this family dynamic. Elena. I reread it twice. No venom. No explanations for her to twist later. Then I hit send and felt something inside me settle. Ethan's shift came from a different direction. It started with a text message from an unknown number one Friday night while Julian and I were cooking in my kitchen, jazz playing softly in the background. Hey. It's Ethan. New phone. My entire body went still. Julian glanced over from the cutting board. Everything okay? I don't know yet, I said. Another bubble popped up. Mom. I'm sorry. Can we fix us? My vision blurred. I blinked hard, forcing the words back into focus. What happened? Julian asked quietly. I handed him the phone. He read the texts, then set it down carefully on the counter, like it was something fragile. You don't have to answer right now, he said. You get to take your time. I did answer. Eventually. Not with a flood of forgiveness, not with a lecture. Just, I'd like that. It will take work. But yes, we can try. Over the next few weeks, more pieces filtered in. Ethan had started seeing a therapist after an incident at school, a fight, suppressed anger finally finding a target. In those sessions, he apparently began unpacking the night of the ambush, the months he'd spent choosing Marcus's version of reality over his own confusion. He said I was being mature, Ethan wrote once. That I was man enough to hear the truth. I thought I was protecting him. I didn't. I didn't get that I was hurting you. It wasn't a neat transformation. There were still defensive edges, still echoes of Marcus's narrative about my career, my distance. But the space between us was no longer filled entirely with accusation. A few months later, he came to Port Norwood for the first time. I met him at the arrivals gate, my heart pounding harder than it had during any board presentation in my life. He'd grown taller. His voice had dropped another octave. For a second we just stared at each other, unsure of where to put our hands, how to bridge the distance. Then he stepped forward and hugged me, awkward, arms too long, but real. Nice place, he said later, wandering through my apartment, peering out at the view. Way better than the old house. Fewer ghosts, I said. He glanced at me, guilty flicker crossing his face. I dream about that night sometimes. The way I sounded. I'm so sorry, Mom. I touched his shoulder. We're not going to live there anymore, I said softly. In that moment. We can visit it when we need to understand it. But we don't live there. He nodded, swallowing hard. Julian came over that evening with takeout and a nervous smile. So this is the famous Ethan, he said, offering a hand. I've heard a lot about you. All good, don't worry. Ethan shook his hand, appraising. You're the architect guy. That's me, Julian said. Professional building nerd. Over dinner, they fell into an easy rhythm, teasing me about my overuse of sticky notes, arguing about the best superhero movies, comparing playlists. I watched them, warmth blooming in my chest. My son, meeting a man who showed affection without making it a competition. A few visits turned into a regular rhythm, school breaks, long weekends. Therapy gave Ethan language for things he'd never been able to articulate before. Slowly, the brittle judgment in his eyes softened into something closer to the teenager I remembered, only older, wiser, carrying scars we acknowledged instead of pretending didn't exist. The letters arrived almost a year after I moved to Port Norwood. One was from Marcus, forwarded through Ariella's office, handwritten on stationery I recognized from our old house. He apologized, sort of. For how things unfolded, for not handling the transition better. He wrote about stress, about feeling unappreciated, about making terrible choices he now regretted. I lost you, and I lost the man I thought I was, he wrote. If you can ever find it in your heart to forgive me, I'd like to try to build some kind of friendship. For Ethan's sake, if nothing else. The other letter came directly to my building, the envelope smudged, the handwriting a shaky echo of the sister I'd grown up with. Livia's words were Messier, streaked in places like tears had dropped onto the page. She wrote about panic attacks, about feeling like she was drowning in diapers and bills and resentment. How Marcus had moved out for good. How the baby, Maya, smiled sometimes and it made the rest almost bearable, but she was so tired. I thought taking what you had would make me feel like I finally mattered, she wrote. It just made everything empty. I don't deserve your help, but I'm asking anyway. Please. I don't know who else to turn to. I sat at my dining table with both letters open in front of me, the afternoon light slanting across the wood. Old Elena would have responded. Carefully worded, trying to balance boundaries with compassion, twisting herself into a shape that made everyone else more comfortable. New Elena stood up, walked to the kitchen, and dropped both letters into the recycling bin. I didn't need to burn them. Fire wasn't the point. Refusing to carry them was. The following spring, I bought a place of my own. A condo carved into the side of a hill overlooking the bay, with a long balcony and enough room for a real dining table and a small office. White walls just waiting for art. A kitchen Julian said had serious potential, while he measured for shelves. Are you sure you want to plant roots here? He asked one evening as we stood on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the water gold. Yes, I said. For the first time in my life, I'm picking a place for me, not because it makes sense for someone else. He nodded, thoughtful. A week later, he showed up with a small box and a nervous energy that made my stomach flip. Before you panic, it's not a ring, he said quickly, holding up his hands. I promise. Great, because my heart rate just spiked, I said, half laughing. He opened the box. Inside lay a simple silver key. I've been thinking, he said. We already spend most of our time together. My lease is up in a few months. I love you, Elena. I love this city. I love watching you come home to a life you built on purpose. If you want, I'd like to make this our place. Our. The word didn't feel like a claim this time. It felt like an invitation. Yes, I said. On one condition. He raised an eyebrow. Name it. We do this slowly. Intentionally. No merging everything so fast we forget where one of us ends and the other begins. He smiled, relief washing over his features. Deal. I like all your edges exactly where they are. Later that week, Ethan called from Chicago, excitement buzzing in his voice. So. I got into Port Norwood University, he said. Engineering program. I'm thinking of accepting. If that's okay with you. Tears pricked my eyes. Ethan, that's more than okay, I said. That's amazing. I figured, he added, trying for casual, if I'm going to start over, might as well do it where my mom is. Maybe you and Julian can help me pick out a dorm. We'd love that, I said, voice thick. After we hung up, I stood on my balcony for a long time, the city stretching out below like an open hand. The night air was cool against my skin. Behind me, I could hear Julian moving around the kitchen, humming under his breath as he chopped something for dinner. I leaned on the railing, watching fairy lights glide across the dark water. In my mind, I saw another night, another living room. Ethan's face hard, his voice ice cold. Your time is over. I let the memory play all the way through this time. Not pushing it away. Not flinching. Then I saw him as he was now, eyes softer, shoulders less tense, talking about dorm room decor and midterms and how he wanted to take me to his favorite coffee shop on campus. My lips curved. My time wasn't over, I murmured to the city, to the water, to the woman I used to be. It was just being rerouted. Marcus and Livia thought betrayal would set them free. They thought they were stepping into some brighter life while I faded into the background. Instead, they walked into a maze built on lies and late notices and sleepless nights, and every exit they thought they saw was just another wall. Reality hit them harder than their guilt ever could. I didn't need to witness every detail of their unraveling to know that. All I had to do was look at where I was standing. On a balcony in a city I'd chosen, in a home with my name on the deed, with a man inside who loved me without needing to diminish me, and a son on his way to build a future within driving distance instead of emotional exile. They tried to write me out of my own story. The woman who walked out of that ambush in a blue suit might have believed them. The woman standing here now knows better. I turned away from the view and went back inside, closing the balcony door behind me. My sister had become my husband's mistress. Reality hit them hard. And I walked into the life I'd always deserved, one they'd never have the power to take from me again. If this story caught your attention, subscribe and join us for the next story.